Today marks the beginning of a very important journey. Your journey to becoming a confident professional and gold standard chemistry teacher in Scotland. Before we dive into atoms, reactions, or how to teach the mole, we first need to understand where you will be teaching. Because a great chemistry teacher is not just someone who knows chemistry. A great teacher knows the system, the values, the history, and the people they serve. Lecture 2. In this first lecture, we will build that map together. We will explore the Scottish education system, from early years to higher education. We will look at the history that made Scotland one of the most educated nations in the world, from parish schools and the Enlightenment to curriculum for excellence. We will meet the key institutions that shape your work: the Scottish Government, Education Scotland, CfE, GTCs, and local authorities. And most importantly, we will understand what makes Scottish education distinctive, its commitment to inclusion, equality, well-being, and the Four Capacities. By the end of today, you will not just know facts about the system. You will begin to see your own place in it. You are now part of a tradition that values breadth as well as depth, service to the whole community, and excellence in teaching. This chapter is the foundation. Every other chapter in this book, every lesson you plan, and every class you teach will build on the ideas we start here. So let's begin. Let's locate ourselves. Let's understand the landscape you're about to enter. Welcome to PGDE Chemistry. Welcome to Scottish education. Let's get started. Chapter 2. Curriculum for Excellence and the Sciences, ES and OS. Dear students, in Chapter 1 we mapped the Scottish education system as a whole. Today, we go deeper into the curriculum framework that shapes every lesson you will teach. Curriculum for Excellence, usually shortened to CfE, is the defining framework of Scottish schooling from age 3 to age 18. Every chemistry lesson you plan, every practical you run, every assessment you design, every conversation you have with a pupil sits within CfE. Understanding this framework in depth is one of the most important pieces of professional knowledge you will develop this year. 2.1 Learning Outcomes. By the end of this chapter, you will be able to do 10 things. First, you will understand the origins, purpose, and structure of Curriculum for Excellence. Second, you will be able to describe the 4 capacities and explain how they shape all curriculum planning. Third, you will know the 7 design principles of CfE and be able to apply them to chemistry teaching. Fourth, you will understand the 8 curriculum areas and where the sciences sit within them. Fifth, you will know the 5 levels of the PGDE and understand the progression across them. Sixth, you will be able to interpret experiences and outcomes and use them to plan chemistry lessons. Seventh, you will understand the sciences ES and osmium in detail, including the specific chemistry content across the levels. Eighth, you will know the benchmarks that describe expected standards at each level. Ninth, you will understand the responsibilities of all teachers for literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being. 10th, you will leave with the professional capacity to plan chemistry teaching that meets CfE expectations at every level of the PGDE. 2.2 Why this topic matters. Curriculum for Excellence is not an add-on to Scottish teaching. It is the framework within which Scottish teaching happens. Every school you enter, every department you join, every classroom you take responsibility for, is shaped by CfE. When your placement mentor observes your teaching, they judge whether your lesson serves CfE principles. When you write a lesson plan, you map it to CfE experiences and outcomes or SQA core specifications. When you contribute to school improvement work, you use CfE language and concepts. A teacher who does not understand CfE cannot teach effectively in Scotland. They will produce lessons that miss the framework's expectations. They will use language that colleagues find imprecise. They will fail to serve the values that Scottish education has committed to. Understanding CfE is therefore a professional obligation for every Scottish teacher, and it is one of the first areas your PGDE programme will address in depth. There is also a practical dimension. The chemistry you teach in S1, S2, and S3 is defined by the sciences AS and OS. The connections between chemistry and other subjects, literacy, numeracy, health and well-being, technologies, are defined by CfE's cross-curricular expectations. The progression from primary school chemistry ideas to secondary school chemistry study is defined by CfE's level structure. Every part of your work at the PGDE stage is CfE shaped. Beyond the PGDE, CfE also influences the senior phase. Although SQA qualifications provide the primary framework for S4 to S6, the values and principles of CfE remain in force. When you teach higher chemistry, you are still expected to develop successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. When you plan an advanced higher project, you are still expected to serve the four capacities. CfE is the constant background of Scottish teaching. Professional identity is another aspect worth mentioning. As a Scottish teacher, you have your own professional language. Words such as learning intentions, success criteria, responsibility of all, outcome and experience, level come into play. You participate in discussions on breadth, depth, coherence, personalization, and challenge. It is not a jargon, but a language of professionals, and speaking it skillfully is one of the ways to recognize yourself as a professional teacher. 2.3. The origins of curriculum for excellence. Let me begin with a brief history. Understanding where CfE came from helps you understand what it is trying to achieve. 2.3.1. The national debate. In the early 2000s, the Scottish Executive, as it was then called, before becoming the Scottish Government, launched a national debate on education. Thousands of teachers, parents, pupils, employers, and community members were consulted about the future of Scottish schooling. The debate identified widespread concerns about the existing curriculum. It was seen as overcrowded, insufficiently coherent, too focused on assessment, and not well aligned with the needs of young people in a changing world. The national debate produced a strong consensus that Scottish education needed reform. Not superficial change, but a deep reimagining of what a curriculum should be and what education should aim to achieve. 2.3.2. The Curriculum Review Group. In response, the Scottish Executive established the Curriculum Review Group, chaired by Fiona Hislop. The group's report, published in 2004, laid the foundations for what would become Curriculum for Excellence. The report proposed a curriculum built around the four capacities: successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors, and a set of design principles intended to produce a coherent, ambitious, and pupil-centered educational experience. The report was widely welcomed. It captured the aspirations of the profession and reflected the values that had emerged from the national debate. It was ambitious in its scope. It proposed nothing less than a fundamental rethinking of what Scottish education should look like. 2.3.3 Implementation from 2010. Curriculum for Excellence was rolled out progressively from 2010. New experiences and outcomes were published for all curriculum areas. Teachers received guidance and professional development. New qualifications, the National 3, National 4, National 5, Higher, and Advanced Higher qualifications we studied in Chapter 3, were designed to align with CfE. Schools began implementing the new curriculum, first in primary and lower secondary, then extending to the senior phase over subsequent years. Implementation was not without difficulty. Teachers reported workload pressures, uncertainty about assessment expectations, and inconsistency across local authorities. The Scottish Government commissioned several reviews and issued updated guidance. Over time, CfE became embedded in practice, though debates about its implementation continue. 2.3.4 CfE Today. Today, CfE is the established framework of Scottish education. Every teacher in Scotland teaches within it. Every school is inspected against it. Every qualification is designed to align with it. The ambition of CfE, to develop rounded, capable, engaged young people through a curriculum that is coherent, challenging, and personalised, remains at the heart of Scottish schooling. 2.4 The Purpose of Curriculum for Excellence. Before we look at the structure of CfE, we must be clear about its purpose. CfE is not a syllabus. It is a framework designed to achieve specific educational purposes. 2.4.1 The central purpose. The key objective of CfE is to ensure that all children and young people in Scotland become successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. These are the four capacities. They are not only outcomes, but also the very essence of why CfE was established in the first place. Every element of CfE, the curriculum areas, the levels, the ES and OS, the design principles, is intended to serve the four capacities. When you plan a chemistry lesson, you are not just teaching chemistry. You are contributing to the development of successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. 2.4.2 The rounded learner. Behind the four capacities is a commitment to developing the whole learner. CfE rejects any narrow view of education as merely instrumental, as merely producing employees, or exam grades, or economic assets. Education, in the CfE view, is about human development in its fullest sense. School not just with qualifications, but with the intellectual, personal, social, and civic capacities to live good lives and contribute to their communities. This ambition is unusual internationally. Many education systems around the world are narrower in focus. CfE stands out for its explicit commitment to the rounded development of the learner, and this commitment shapes everything Scottish teachers do. 2.4.3 Personalisation and choice. Alongside its ambition for rounded development, CfE emphasises personalisation and choice. Different pupils have different interests, aptitudes, and needs. A curriculum that treats every pupil identically will fail some of them. CfE therefore requires teachers to plan for personalisation, to offer choices where appropriate, to recognise individual paths, to support pupils in shaping their own learning journeys. 2.4.4 Coherence. A further ambition of CfE is coherence. Learning should not be experienced as a series of disconnected fragments. It should be experienced as a coherent whole, in which connections between subjects are made, in which progression is deliberate, in which the different elements of a pupil's education support each other. This is why CfE emphasises cross-curricular themes such as literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being. Themes that all teachers, regardless of subject, contribute to. 4.5 Challenge and enjoyment. Finally, CfE emphasises both challenge and enjoyment. Learning should be genuinely demanding. Pupils should be stretched, not coasted through easy tasks. But learning should also be engaging and enjoyable. The two are not opposites. When pupils are properly challenged in a context they find engaging, they experience the deepest forms of learning. 2.5 The Four Capacities. Let me now describe the four capacities in more detail. These are the defining outcomes of Scottish education, and every chemistry teacher must be able to name them, explain them, and connect their teaching to them. 2.5.1 Successful learners. Successful learners are pupils who develop the following characteristics. They have enthusiasm and motivation for learning. They see learning as valuable, interesting, and worth pursuing. They have determination to reach high standards of achievement. They aim high and work hard. They have openness to new thinking and ideas. They engage seriously with material they have not encountered before. They use literacy, communication, and numeracy skills. They can read, write, speak, listen, and calculate at a high level. They use technology for learning. They engage with digital tools appropriately. They think creatively and independently. They generate their own ideas and evaluate the ideas of others. They learn as part of a group and independently. They can collaborate, and they can work alone. They make reasoned evaluations. They weigh evidence and arguments before drawing conclusions. They link and apply different kinds of learning in new situations. They transfer knowledge across contexts. Successful learners, in the CfE view, are not just pupils who pass exams. They are pupils who have become genuine learners, thinkers who can continue to grow throughout their lives. 2.5.2 Confident individuals. Confident individuals are pupils who develop the following characteristics. They have self-respect. They value themselves as human beings. They have a sense of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. They are healthy in the broadest sense. They have secure values and beliefs. They have thought about what they think matters and why. They have ambition. They aspire to significant things in their lives. They relate to others and manage themselves. They form good relationships and regulate their own behavior. They pursue a healthy and active life. They engage in physical activity and healthy habits. They are self-aware. They understand their own strengths, limitations, and feelings. They develop and communicate their own beliefs and views of the world. They have positions and can explain them. They live as independently as they can. They take responsibility for themselves. They assess risk and make informed decisions. They think carefully before acting. They achieve success in different areas of activity. They experience genuine accomplishment. Confident individuals are pupils who are becoming secure, self-aware, and capable human beings. This is not the same as being loud or extroverted. Quiet, introverted pupils can be highly confident individuals in the CfE sense. What matters is inner security and the capacity to take one's place in the world. 2.5.3 Responsible citizens. Responsible citizens are pupils who develop the following characteristics. They have respect for others. They treat other people well. They have a commitment to participate responsibly in political, economic, social, and cultural life. They engage constructively with the wider society. They develop knowledge and understanding of the world and Scotland's place in it. They know where they are, geographically, historically, and culturally. They understand different beliefs and cultures. They engage seriously with viewpoints other than their own. They make informed choices and decisions. They act on the basis of understanding. They evaluate environmental, scientific, and technological issues. They engage with the complex issues of our time. They develop informed, ethical views of complex issues. They think about right and wrong in a considered way. Responsible citizens are pupils who are being prepared to take their place in a democratic society. They understand the responsibilities as well as the rights of citizenship. They are equipped to participate in public life. 2.5.4 Effective contributors. Effective contributors are pupils who develop the following characteristics. They have enterprise and resilience. They can initiate action and persist through setbacks. They have self-reliance. They can work independently. They can communicate in different ways and in different settings. They adapt their communication to context. They can work in partnership and in teams. They collaborate well. They take the initiative and lead. They step forward when appropriate. They apply critical thinking in new contexts. They analyze and solve problems. They create and develop. They produce things of value. They solve problems. They find solutions to challenges. Effective contributors are pupils who can make a difference in the settings where they live, work, and study. They are not passive recipients of what others do, they are active shapers of their world. 2.5.5 The Four Capacities together. The four capabilities all together sum up to being an all-round person. If one has knowledge but no self-confidence, one cannot be considered a successful learner because that would mean having knowledge but no security. One might have security, but no moral integrity, since he is a confident individual, but not a responsible citizen. Being a responsible citizen without being an effective contributor is being moral but impractical. The four capacities work together. Every chemistry lesson you teach should serve them together, not one at the expense of the others. When you design a lesson, ask yourself, how does this contribute to successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, and effective contributors? If you cannot answer, redesign the lesson. 2.5.6 The Capacities in a Chemistry Classroom. Let me give concrete examples of how the capacities appear in a chemistry classroom. A pupil investigating rates of reaction is becoming a successful learner, thinking scientifically, working with evidence, drawing reasoned conclusions. A pupil presenting their findings to the class is becoming a confident individual, communicating their thinking, taking a public position. A pupil discussing the environmental impacts of plastic pollution is becoming a responsible citizen, engaging with the complex issues of our time. A pupil designing a solution to a laboratory problem is becoming an effective contributor, producing something of value. Every element of a chemistry lesson can serve the capacities. Your job is to design lessons that do so intentionally. 2.6 The 7 Design Principles. Alongside the 4 capacities, CfE identifies 7 design principles that should shape every curriculum decision. These are not the ends of education, they are the means. They describe how curriculum should be structured to serve the 4 capacities. 2.6.1 Challenge and enjoyment. Learning should be genuinely demanding, and it should also be engaging. Pupils should be stretched to work at the edge of their capability. They should also find their learning interesting, meaningful, and rewarding. The two are not in tension. A challenging lesson can be deeply enjoyable. An enjoyable lesson can be genuinely challenging. For chemistry, this means designing lessons that push pupils intellectually while engaging their curiosity. A well-designed practical, a difficult problem to solve, a rich discussion of a real-world issue, all can produce both challenge and enjoyment. 2.6.2 Breadth. Pupils should experience a broad range of learning across all the curriculum areas. They should not specialize prematurely. During the PGDE, this means all pupils study all major subjects, including all 3 sciences. Chemistry is one strand within the broader science experience. Breadth matters because pupils cannot know in advance what will engage them, what they will be good at, or what they will need. A broad curriculum keeps options open and develops the whole person. 2.6.3 Progression. Learning should progress from one stage to the next. Each stage should build on the previous, and each should prepare for the next. The Einsteinium and OS are structured to show progression across levels. The chemistry curriculum from primary 1 to advanced higher shows the progression that CfE requires. For chemistry, this means understanding what pupils have learned before and what they will learn next. A national 5 lesson on atoms builds on the elementary ideas developed in primary and PGDE. It prepares for the more sophisticated treatment at higher. 2.6.4 Depth. Apart from breadth, there needs to be some depth too. The pupil needs to work through the subject matter deeply enough to gain understanding of the subject and not merely get an exposure to it. For the subject of chemistry, this implies covering up the subject matter in depth and not just skimming through it. If the pupil understands the mole concept, he or she has depth. If not, not. 2.6.5 Personalization and choice. Pupils should have some choice in their learning, and their learning should be personalized to their interests and needs. This does not mean every pupil should learn something different. It means the curriculum should include opportunities for choice, and teachers should adapt to individual pupils. For chemistry, this means offering pupils choice within the curriculum, perhaps a choice of context for an investigation, or a choice of specific examples to focus on. It also means adapting your teaching to the pupils in front of you, as we discussed in Chapter 11. 2.6.6 Coherence. Learning must be coherent rather than disconnected. Learners need to make connections between different subjects, connections within subjects, and connections between school and the outside world. The themes across the curriculum, connected learning, and the making of connections between ideas all help to achieve that goal of coherence. In chemistry, this implies that connections are made. Make connections between chemistry and biology in biochemistry. Make connections between chemistry and physics in energy studies. Make connections between chemistry and mathematics in calculations. 2.6.7 Relevance. Learning should be relevant, connected to pupils' lives, to the world around them, and to their futures. Relevance is not the same as immediate applicability. Sometimes learning is relevant because it opens future possibilities, or because it develops the mind, or because it contributes to good citizenship. For chemistry, this means showing pupils why chemistry matters. Connect chemistry to the materials they use, the food they eat, the medicines they take, the environmental challenges they face, the careers they might pursue. Do not leave chemistry as an abstract exercise disconnected from the real world. 2.6.8 The 7 Principles Together. Challenge and enjoyment, breadth, progression, depth, Personalization and choice, coherence, relevance work together. A well-designed curriculum embodies all 7. Every lesson you plan should serve them together. 2.7 The 8 curriculum areas. CfE organizes the curriculum into 8 areas. This organization is used across the PGDE and shapes the way subject knowledge is developed. 2.7.1 Expressive arts, including art and design, dance, drama, and music. Health and well-being, including physical education, food and health, mental and emotional well-being, and personal safety. Languages, including literacy in English, modern languages, and Gaelic and classical languages. Mathematics, including numeracy and mathematics. Religious and moral education, including Christianity, other world religions, and moral development. Sciences, including biology, physics, and topical science. Social studies, including history, geography, and modern studies. Technologies, including computing science, food technology, technological developments in society, and craft, design, engineering. 2.7.2 Chemistry within the sciences. The topic of chemistry is curriculum area. Sciences include biology, chemistry, physics, and topical science, which are taught as separate sciences or as integrated sciences, depending on the institution. In primary and early secondary education, sciences tend to be taught as integrated sciences. In S3, and certainly in the senior phase, chemistry becomes a separate subject with its own qualifications. 2.7.3 The cross-curricular themes. Alongside the 8 areas, CfE identifies cross-curricular themes that every teacher, regardless of subject, contributes to. The most important are literacy across learning, numeracy across learning, and health and well-being across learning. Every teacher in Scotland is expected to develop pupils' capabilities in these 3 areas. We will study literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being as responsibilities of all teachers in more detail in Section 214. For now, understand that they are core expectations of the CfE framework, and that as a chemistry teacher, you contribute to them in every lesson you teach. 2.8 The 5 levels of the PGDE. CfE organizes learning during the broad general education into 5 levels. These levels describe stages of development, not specific age groups, though there are typical age ranges associated with each. The early level comprises preschool and primary 1. The early level is the start of formal education, where learners develop their skills by play and experience. The first level comprises approximately from primary 2 to primary 4. At this level, pupils build up literacy, numeracy, and other skills. The second level comprises approximately from primary 5 to primary 7. At this level, pupils expand and consolidate what they have learned and get prepared for secondary school. The third level comprises approximately from secondary 1 to secondary 2. Pupils learn a more advanced curriculum with subject specialists. The fourth level comprises approximately from secondary 3. At this level, pupils get further development and prepare for the senior phase. 2.8.2 Level Not Age. One notable feature of the level system of the CfE framework is that each level reflects a developmental stage and not an age group. Some students will attain the 4th level even before they attain the age of secondary 3, while others may be at a different level at their age. The framework provides for this, and thus teachers can work with the right level for each student. 2.8.3 Progression across levels. Learning progresses across the levels. Each level builds on the previous. AS and OS are written for specific levels, and they describe what pupils at that level should experience and achieve. For chemistry, this means that pupils at primary 5 will encounter chemistry ideas at 2nd level. Pupils at secondary 1 will encounter chemistry at 3rd level, and pupils at secondary 3 will encounter chemistry at 4th level. The specific content becomes progressively more sophisticated across the levels, preparing pupils for the national qualifications in the senior phase. 2.4 The 4th level and the senior phase. The 4th level typically completes at the end of secondary 3 and marks the transition into the senior phase. In S4, pupils begin national qualifications. National 3, National 4, and National 5 correspond broadly to the levels of achievement pupils have reached, with National 5 being the qualification most pupils take at the end of S4. 2.9 The structure of experiences and outcomes. The BGE curriculum is expressed through experiences and outcomes, usually shortened to ES and OS. Specific learning statements that describe what pupils should experience and achieve at each level in each curriculum area. 2.91 The format of an E and O. Each E and O is a short statement written from the pupil's perspective. It begins with the pupil's voice. I have, I understand, I explore, and describes a specific piece of learning. For example, a science's second level E and O might state, by investigating common conditions that increase the amount of substance that will dissolve or the speed of dissolving, I can relate my findings to the world around me. Another might state, I've participated in practical activities to separate simple mixtures of substances and can relate my findings to my everyday experience. Each E and O is labeled with a code that identifies its curriculum area, its level, and its specific position within the sequence. 2.9.2 The Sciences E and O codes. Sciences ES and OS use the prefix SCN followed by a code identifying level and position. For example, 2 to 15A is a second-level Sciences E and O, is a third-level Sciences E and O. The codes are useful for planning and for communicating with colleagues. When you write a lesson plan, you can identify the specific E and O the lesson addresses. When you discuss curriculum with colleagues, you can refer to be precise. 2.9.3 Reading the ES. Reading ES and OS carefully is one of the professional skills you must develop. Each statement has been drafted deliberately. The verbs matter. I have investigated implies a specific kind of activity. I can explain implies a specific kind of outcome. The nouns matter. The specific content is precisely stated. The scope matters. The E and O may cover a narrow topic or a broad theme. When you plan a lesson, identify the specific E or O it addresses. Read the E and O carefully. Design the lesson so that it produces the experience and the outcome described. Then check your plan against the E and O. Does the lesson really produce what the E and O requires? 2.9.4 ES and OS are not a syllabus. An important point. The ES and Os are not a syllabus in the traditional sense. They do not prescribe specific facts to be taught in a specific order. They describe experiences to be had and outcomes to be achieved. Different schools may address the same E and O through different specific content. Different teachers may design different lessons to serve the same E and O. This is a feature, not a bug. It gives teachers professional autonomy to design curriculum that works for their pupils, but it also places responsibility on teachers to make good decisions. You are not just following a script, you are designing learning. 2.10 The Sciences S and OS. Let me now walk through the Sciences ES and OS in more detail. These are the curriculum statements that shape chemistry teaching in the BGE. 2.10.1 The Organization of the Sciences ES and OS. The Sciences ES and OS are organized into 5 main strands. Planet Earth, including biodiversity and interdependence, energy sources and sustainability, processes of the planet and space. Forces electricity and waves, including forces electricity, vibrations and waves. Biological systems including body systems and cells and inheritance. Materials including properties and uses of substances, Earth's materials, and chemical changes. Topical science, including current developments in scientific understanding. Chemistry ideas appear primarily in the materials strand, but they also appear in other strands where relevant. For example, discussions of energy sources involve chemistry. Discussions of processes of the planet involve chemistry. Discussions of biological systems involve biochemistry. 2.10.2 The materials strand. The materials strand is where the chemistry content is most concentrated. Let me give a sense of the progression across levels. At early level, pupils explore materials in their environment, noticing properties and uses. They begin to develop a basic vocabulary of materials. At first level, pupils explore properties of materials, describe them, and compare different materials. They begin to distinguish natural from manufactured materials. At second level, pupils investigate properties of materials, changes in materials, mixtures and solutions, and simple separation techniques. Chemistry ideas begin to take shape as pupils encounter dissolving, filtering, and the effect of heating. At third level, pupils extend their study to include the periodic table, chemical reactions, and the properties of common substances. This is where formal chemistry vocabulary begins to be introduced. At fourth level, pupils study atomic structure, bonding, chemical equations, and the properties of substances in more detail. Pupils at fourth level are preparing for the national qualifications. 2.10.3 Specific fourth level chemistry ideas. At fourth level, chemistry ES and OS address specific ideas such as the structure of atoms in terms of protons, neutrons, and electrons, the arrangement of electrons in shells, the periodic table as an organizing framework for elements, chemical bonding, ionic, covalent, and metallic, chemical equations and their balancing, rates of reaction and factors that affect them, acids, bases, and neutralization, the properties of common substances explained in terms of structure and bonding. These fourth-level ideas connect directly to the National 5 curriculum. Pupils who have engaged fully with the fourth-level chemistry ES and OS are well prepared for National 5. 2.10.4 Skills and Attitudes. Alongside the content, the sciences S and OS address skills and attitudes. Pupils should develop skills of scientific inquiry, including observing, questioning, planning, predicting, gathering evidence, analyzing, and drawing conclusions. Skills of communication, including reading, writing, listening, and speaking in scientific contexts. Skills of collaboration, including working with others on investigations. Attitudes of curiosity, open-mindedness, and integrity, the dispositions of a scientist. These skills and attitudes are as important as the content knowledge. A pupil who has memorized facts without developing scientific skills has not been well served by science education. A pupil who has developed the skills and attitudes of a scientist has been given something they can build on for life. 2.1 The benchmarks. Alongside the ES and OS, Education Scotland has published benchmarks for each curriculum area. Benchmarks describe what achievement of an E&O looks like at each level. The purpose of benchmarks. Benchmarks were introduced to provide greater clarity about expected standards. AS and OS describe what pupils should experience and achieve, but they can be interpreted in different ways. Benchmarks provide more specific descriptions of what achievement looks like. For example, an E and O might state that pupils will investigate chemical changes. A benchmark might specify that at second level this means pupils can describe observable changes, color, gas production, temperature change. While at third level it means pupils can also explain these changes in terms of new substances being formed. 2.11.2 Using benchmarks in planning. When you plan chemistry teaching in the BGE, use the benchmarks alongside the ES and Osmium. The Einsteinium and Osmium tell you the broad expectations. The benchmarks tell you what achievement looks like in more specific terms. Benchmarks are particularly useful for assessment. When you assess a piece of pupil work, the benchmarks help you judge whether the pupil has achieved the level expected. 2.11.3 Benchmarks are not a ceiling. An important point. Benchmarks describe the expected standard at a level. They are not a ceiling. Pupils who can achieve more should be encouraged to do so. Benchmarks describe what most pupils should reach. They do not describe the maximum any pupil should attempt. 2.12 Responsibilities of all teachers. CfE identifies 3 cross-curricular themes that every teacher, regardless of subject, contributes to. These are responsibilities of all teachers. 2.12.1 Literacy across learning. Every teacher in Scotland is a teacher of literacy. This does not mean that chemistry teachers become English teachers. It means that every teacher contributes to the development of pupils' reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills. For chemistry, this includes reading scientific texts, textbooks, articles, worksheets with understanding, writing scientifically, using appropriate vocabulary, sentence structure, and register. Speaking in scientific contexts, explaining ideas, discussing results, presenting findings. Listening in scientific contexts, following explanations, responding to questions, engaging in dialogue. Every chemistry lesson develops literacy in some way. When you teach pupils to interpret a data table, you are teaching literacy. When you teach pupils to write an extended response, you are teaching literacy. When you discuss a scientific issue, you are teaching literacy. Literacy should be planned for deliberately. In the lesson planning stage, determine the ways in which literacy is being promoted. Employ vocabulary instruction, writing frames and dialogic teaching strategies from Chapter 10. 2.12.2 Numeracy across learning. Every teacher in Scotland is a teacher of numeracy. Again, this does not mean that chemistry teachers become mathematics teachers. It means that every teacher contributes to pupils' numeracy development. For chemistry, this is straightforward. Chemistry is a heavily quantitative subject. Every calculation is a numeracy opportunity. Every graph, table, or measurement is a numeracy opportunity. Every use of scientific notation, percentages, or ratios is a numeracy opportunity. Numeracy needs to be explicitly taught. Just because pupils are doing chemistry does not mean that they are able to do calculations. Show how calculations are done. Provide feedback on numeracy as well as on chemistry. 2.12.3 Health and Wellbeing across learning. Every teacher in Scotland is a teacher of health and well-being. This is perhaps less obvious for chemistry, but it is no less important. Health and well-being includes physical well-being, safe practice in the laboratory, healthy habits, physical activity. Mental and emotional well-being, supportive relationships, positive learning experiences, engagement with pupils' feelings. Social well-being, collaborative learning, respect for others, working productively in groups. Environmental well-being, understanding of environmental issues, sustainable practices, awareness of the natural world. For chemistry, this means teaching in ways that support all these dimensions. Safe practice in the laboratory serves physical well-being. Supportive teacher-pupil relationships serve mental and emotional well-being. Collaborative practical work serves social well-being. Discussion of green chemistry and environmental issues serves environmental well-being. 2.13 Interdisciplinary learning. Alongside the 8 curriculum areas, CfE promotes interdisciplinary learning, planned learning that draws on multiple subjects to address issues, themes, or problems. 2.1 What interdisciplinary learning is. Interdisciplinary learning refers to an aspect where various subjects' teachers work together to ensure that learning crosses various disciplines. An interdisciplinary topic like climate change can be addressed in chemistry, greenhouse gases, biology, ecosystems, geography, weather systems, and mathematics, statistics. 2.13.2 The value of interdisciplinary learning. Interdisciplinary learning matters because real-world issues do not respect subject boundaries. Climate change is not just chemistry, or biology, or geography. It is all of them. Health is not just biology. It involves chemistry, mathematics, social studies, and health and well-being. Preparing pupils to engage with complex issues requires connecting across subjects. 2.13.3 Interdisciplinary learning in practice. In practice, interdisciplinary learning takes many forms. Some schools organize specific interdisciplinary projects at PGDE level. Others build interdisciplinary connections into subject teaching. Others use interdisciplinary weeks or terms to focus on specific themes. As a chemistry teacher, you should be open to interdisciplinary work. Look for opportunities to connect chemistry to other subjects. Discuss ideas with colleagues in other departments. Participate in interdisciplinary planning where the opportunity arises. 2.14 Planning for CfE. Let me now turn to the practical question of how you plan for CfE in your chemistry teaching. 2.14.1 Identifying the relevant ES and OS. When you plan a unit of PGDE chemistry teaching, begin by identifying the relevant ES and OS. What level are your pupils at? What ES and OS apply? Read them carefully. Identify the specific ES and OS you intend to address in each lesson. Do not try to address every E and O in every lesson. Focus on one or two per lesson so that pupils can engage with them deeply. 2.14.2 Connecting to the Four Capacities. With regard to each of the lessons, reflect on how they help in achieving the four capacities. Are the lessons fostering successful learners? Are they fostering confident individuals? Are they fostering responsible citizens? Are they fostering effective contributors? The best lessons should cover all the four. 2.14.3 Applying the design principles. For each lesson, consider the design principles. Is the lesson challenging and enjoyable? Does it fit into the broader curriculum? Does it progress from previous learning? Does it develop depth? Does it allow personalization and choice? Is it coherent? Is it relevant? You will not achieve all 7 principles in every lesson. But over a unit or a term, you should be able to demonstrate that your teaching has served all 7. 2.14.4 Cross-curricular connections. For each lesson, consider cross-curricular connections. How does it develop literacy, numeracy, health and well-being? Are there connections to other subjects that could enrich the lesson? 2.14.5 Assessment for learning. For each lesson, plan formative assessment as we studied in Chapter 12. Share learning intentions and success criteria. Design questions that surface pupil thinking. Give feedback that moves learning forward. Involve pupils in peer and self-assessment. 2.14.6 Progression across lessons. Beyond individual lessons, plan progression across sequences of lessons. What will pupils know and be able to do at the end of the unit that they cannot do at the start? How does this unit prepare pupils for the next unit and for the senior phase? 2.15 Common misconceptions about CfE. Let me address some common misconceptions that new PGDE students bring to Curriculum for Excellence. The first misconception is that CfE is soft or lacks rigor. It is not. Deeply committed to challenge and to high standards, what it rejects is narrow, instrumental teaching that focuses only on exam grades at the expense of broader development. The second misconception about CfE is that it stands for no facts, no content, and no knowledge. That is wrong. CfE demands content knowledge. The only knowledge it dismisses is that which lacks understanding, application, and disposition. The third misconception is that CfE is only relevant to primary and lower secondary. It is not. The four capacities and the design principles apply throughout schooling, including the senior phase. The fourth misconception is that CfE is a set of paperwork requirements. It is not. It is a framework for education. The paperwork is a means to an end, not the end itself. The fifth misconception is that CfE prescribes specific pedagogy. It does not. Teachers have professional autonomy to choose the pedagogical approaches that serve CfE principles. The sixth misconception is that the ES and OS are a strict syllabus that must be followed word for word. They are not. They are descriptions of experiences and outcomes to be achieved. Teachers have professional autonomy about how to serve them. The seventh misconception is that literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being are optional add-ons. They are not. They are responsibilities of all teachers, embedded in the CfE framework. 2.16 Common pitfalls in teaching within CfE. The first pitfall is to view CfE as a bunch of forms to fill in, instead of a structure to work through. The second pitfall is to refer to the four capacities in a lesson plan, while not really designing for them. The third pitfall is claiming to address an E and O without genuinely producing the experience or outcome it describes. The fourth pitfall is neglecting cross-curricular themes because the primary focus is chemistry. The fifth pitfall is applying the design principles selectively rather than integratively. The sixth pitfall is planning for CfE at the level of unit, but not at the level of individual lesson, or vice versa. The seventh pitfall is confusing CfE with a specific pedagogical approach, for example, assuming that CfE requires group work or discovery learning. The eighth pitfall is neglecting progression across levels, treating each level as a separate curriculum, rather than as part of a continuum. The ninth pitfall is failing to use benchmarks to clarify expected standards. The 10th pitfall is not engaging with interdisciplinary opportunities because chemistry teaching is treated as a silo. 2.17 Exam style and reflective questions. State and define the four capacities within the curriculum for excellence. Your answer must include the following names and definitions: successful learners, responsible citizens, and effective contributors. Question 2. List the 7 principles that are part of CfE and describe how each can be used within a chemistry lesson. An excellent answer will include the following 7 principles: challenge and enjoyment, breadth, progression, depth, personalization and choice, coherence, relevance. Question 3. Explain how a chemistry lesson can contribute to the 4 capacities. Would identify specific ways in which chemistry teaching develops each capacity. Question 4. Describe the responsibilities of all teachers under CfE and explain how a chemistry teacher fulfills them. A strong answer would name literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being across learning, and describe specific chemistry teaching practices that develop each. Question 5. Describe the relationship between the concept of experiences and outcomes and that of benchmarks, explaining how a teacher might combine the two concepts in the process of planning. A good answer will define both the terms and show how planning employs Einsteinium and osmium in conjunction with benchmarks. 2.18 How to remember this chapter for the long term. First, remember the 4 capacities: successful learners, confident individuals, responsible citizens, effective contributors. Second, remember the 7 design principles: challenge and enjoyment, breadth, progression, depth, personalization and choice, coherence, relevance. The 8 curriculum areas: expressive arts, health and well-being, languages, mathematics, religious and moral education, sciences, social studies, technologies. Fourth, remember the fast second, third, fourth. Remember the responsibilities of all teachers: literacy, numeracy, health and well-being across learning. Sixth, that Einsteinium and osmium describe experiences and outcomes, and benchmarks describe expected standards. Seventh, internalize this single sentence: I plan chemistry teaching that develops all 4 capacities, that applies the 7 design principles, that draws on the sciences ES and OS and the benchmarks to define learning at the appropriate level, that develops literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being as responsibilities of all teachers, and that connects to other subjects through interdisciplinary opportunities where they arise. 2.1 9 Teacher Explanation Script for Placement. 219.1 To your university tutor after a lesson. This third-level chemistry lesson was designed to meet the specific E&O SCN 3 to 15 concerning chemical changes. I used the design elements of challenge and enjoyment, as the lesson included a demonstration that raised questions, and progression, as the knowledge of physical changes at the second level was used to create this lesson. I worked on the 4 capacities using successful learners, as the lesson included investigation, confident individuals by including a peer discussion, responsible citizens by having a discussion on a real-life application, and effective contributors by including planning in a group. Literacy and numeracy were also used in the lesson. 219.2 To your school mentor when planning. For this PGDE unit on materials, I have specified the particular ES and OS that pertain to third level. I have organized my plan to include 6 lessons which will cover 1 or 2 ES and OS each as the lessons unfold throughout the unit. I have employed the benchmarking technique to understand what constitutes success in third level. I have incorporated development in literacy and numeracy skills using vocabulary exercises and writing, as well as data handling respectively. In addition, I have made one interdisciplinary link with biology in relation to dissolved substances in the human body. To a fellow PGDE student, this has been something which I have discovered that CfE does help my planning as opposed to hinder it. When I plan a lesson in line with the 4 capacities and the design principles of CfE, it forces me to consider my lessons much more thoroughly than previously. It is not simply about the learning, but the development of the learners as a whole. 2.19.4 To pupils introducing a new PGDE unit. Over the next few weeks, we will study materials and their properties. By the end of the unit, you will be able to investigate why substances behave differently, to explain those differences using ideas about particles, and to apply what you learn to real-world materials you use every day. We will do practical investigations, discussions, and problem-solving activities. You will also develop your scientific writing and your ability to work with data. This unit will prepare you for the more advanced chemistry you will study in 4th level and later in National 5. 2.20 Chapter Closing. Curriculum for Excellence is not just a policy, but also the structure that defines the values that make up Scottish education. This is what you work within when teaching chemistry in Scotland. The lessons that you plan, assessments that you design, and relationships that you build with your pupils all exist within CfE. Don't underestimate this framework. This is not a top-down approach. This is the result of the shared effort to define the aims of Scottish education. If you educate successful learners in your classroom, you work for CfE. If you cultivate confident individuals, you work for CfE. If you develop responsible citizens and effective contributors, you work for CfE. It's worth working on those 4 capacities because they define what young people need in Scotland. Read the sciences S and OS for the level of pupils you are teaching. Read them carefully. Consult the benchmarks. Plan lessons that genuinely produce the experiences and outcomes described. Build in literacy, numeracy, and health and well-being. Apply the design principles, designed for the 4 capacities. This is what CfE-aligned teaching looks like. CfE is not synonymous with conformity. You have great flexibility in your professional practice. You make decisions about the methods, materials, rate, examples, and links. The requirement of CfE is that the decisions that you make must be based on its values. In other words, you have great flexibility in teaching your own way, tailored to your own students. In our next chapter, we turn from CfE to the senior phase, the SQA qualifications that shape teaching from S4 to S6. We will study National 3, National 4, National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher Chemistry, and the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework that places these qualifications alongside every other Scottish qualification on a single scale. Together, CfE and the SQA qualifications provide the full curriculum architecture within which you will teach. Alright everyone, that's it for Lecture 1, Foundations of Scottish Chemistry Teaching. Today we built the map. We understood the Scottish education system, its history, its values, and where we as future chemistry teachers fit into it. In the next lecture, we're going to break down curriculum for excellence, what it really means, the 4 capacities, and how it shapes every single chemistry lesson you'll teach in Scotland. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss Lecture 3. Drop a comment below with one thing you learned today, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next lecture.